right. Thank you for joining us for the show by Below Average Betters. For Below Average Betters, that's right. It's the Nosebleeds Friday edition. And
Oh yeah, it is Friday.
Dominic kind of threw me off there with the.
Sorry.
He always looks like he's picking his nose or
What happens
something.
if like a booger flies out one time? I ain't cutting it. I'm leaving it in. Anyway,
I was about to say that shit gonna be bloopers, but it sounds like it don't have to be. You're just gonna leave it in. But this is the new norm for now. I know we just started this show and we're already moving it to Fridays, but
Yeah.
let me just be clear. This is more so to help our MMA podcast because
yeah.
unfortunately we record both of these, both this and the weekend previews on Wednesday evening. And it doesn't really, the betting show, it's pretty much fine. If a fight falls out, we can kind of cut around it or whatever. The problem has been, and it's really not been a problem, it's more so like trying to work ahead before it becomes a problem.
Mm-hmm.
We had a situation last week where we recorded, and then a couple hours after we recorded, Dariush was announced to be off of his fight with Islam Makhachev. Even if we recorded on, even if we had released an episode Thursday, we still wouldn't have talked about it then. But it's just about the expectation. So if we're releasing episodes on Friday, I think most people who listen expect to have at least up to Thursday's announcements, details in there.
Yeah.
So we just needed to make this change. Obviously, a lot's been shaken up in our life recently. I just graduated college. I moved to a different state, started a new job. Dominic's got his own job and going for his master's. So, we have very select times that we can record of a week.
Yeah.
And because of that, we just got to kind of work our schedule around that. I still think it's a pretty decent schedule. I mean, it's still Monday, Thursday, Friday. It's just swapping the betting show with the weekend preview. So, obviously, leave your thoughts. If enough people tell us, fuck you, change it back now.
All right, guys.
Maybe we will. I don't know.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I'm stalling.
This is the second time we've done this.
In case you can't tell, I'm dressed like B Rabbit from 8 Mile. Because this week is make or break week, Dominic.
Yeah, we're about to see why.
Or maybe I'm not just wearing this because maybe it's like, maybe I'm not just wearing this as like, point of pride for this week, like make or break. This is now or never. Maybe it's also because I feel like I'm about to be dodging some punches from some people because it's not pretty. I mean, it's not. And, I got to take the fall here. I've been the one that's lagged behind a little bit so far. Dominic's, I believe, still in the plus for his yearly total.
We're treading water.
I'm not right now. I'm lagging behind. We had a good couple weeks, but this is a bad one. I can't deny it. So, Dominic, I know you were the one bright spot in terms of you had
way down there on the bottom,
the lone green bet. But just tell me what kind of stuck out to you about what went wrong, and you can talk about what went right too.
Yeah, I mean, so our parlays were both really similar. I had one, the third leg attached, which Diana Belbita lost. Not a controversial decision per se, but I thought she won the fight personally, money aside. But it was a fun fight, so for what it's worth, that was nice. But then Jessica Rose Clark missed on both of our parlays. Really shocked me there. I thought that was kind of her fight to lose, and she went out and lost it. She got submitted pretty early on in that fight, didn't show much. And I got to give a shout out to, by the way, Christian Rodriguez. It was my riskiest pick. And I said that on last week's show. But damn it if he didn't make it interesting. What a fight that was that Christian Rodriguez had with Jonathan Pierce. Fantastic grappling transitions. Rodriguez made it fun on the feet. Thought he was going to finish the fight a couple of times. It's not going to be the last time I put some money on Christian. I'll put it that way.
I like that. I like that positivity to kind of, you lost on him, but it doesn't mean you won't bet on him again.
Right.
I can say I'm not going to have that kind of sentiment here with some of my picks.
Yeah.
No disrespect to Alan Badeau. I knew it was kind of a risky pick, but that's where I fucked up. I bet on when you get these two heavyweights that are kind of unremarkable, they get thrown onto a co-main or featured spot on the main card. Avoid, run away, don't do it.
Run far.
And here, this fight with Badeau and Parker Porter, I mean, not only was it a bit of a snooze, But, Badeau looked great early. I
He
thought he was
did.
going to win this fight. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I made a good pick. And then the rest of the fight happened.
Then he got a little cocky, and that
And
didn't help his
I'm
case.
not, yeah, look, I'm not going to pretend, guys. I might have said some things I shouldn't have in the group text. And that's why I say that stuff in the group text because, that's where I can let out the anger. But then here I can be like, oh, I'm Noah. I don't care about anything.
Yeah.
But let me just put it like this: unremarkable heavyweights are staying off on my bet slip forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jessica Rose Clark was a tough one. I mean, I still like her, but it's just tough when we both had kind of money line
Yeah.
on her. I know you also had Belbita, but David Onama looked great. I mean, that was
Yeah,
something.
very
And,
true.
and really, I guess actually I need to address this because even though I think the thing the sound bite that matters, I think came from the actual preview we did of this card for the podcast. Joaquin Buckley versus Abdulrazak Al Hassan under 1.5 rounds. I thought this was a lock. I
Yeah.
said these two were going to come in there. I mean, it is one of those fights where you kind of give it the kiss of death by making that kind of bold claim, like this fight cannot go to distance, and it did. Dominic was one of the few people that saw it going that way. And I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure I said, I will literally shit. And then maybe I even said you could shit in my mouth. I don't remember.
Oh,
There was some words that were shared that I wish I could take back because
yeah.
I really thought that fight wasn't going the distance. And, shout out to Joaquin Buckley. He kind of did what he had to do.
True.
But, overall, I mean, I shouldn't have put anything on the main event. That fight was too iffy from the get-go. We didn't know what kind of Johnny Walker was going to show up.
Yeah.
And I definitely didn't think that Jamal Hill was going to spark him like that in under a round.
Not that
or
quick.
Under
Yeah.
2 rounds. I mean, it's just, these are the kind of losses that I'm for the most part, like I'm okay with it. Like, again, not our night, but a lot of picks on here I felt like the Badeau pick, that fight could have went either way when it came to
Yeah.
scorecards. Belbita could have went either way on the scorecards.
Yeah.
Yes, I know Rose Clark is still on there. You still have some X's on here. Christian Rodriguez, very close. These are the kind of L's that I'm okay with. Like, for the most part, none of these were, like, outright terrible picks. And
Right.
that's the most you can ask for. We're still plus for the year, though. If that means
Amen.
anything.
Yeah.
But let's get into the main event money line. I'm done looking
Get that
at
shit off that
Yeah.
screen. Okay. Hold on. Where's the damn thing? Here we go. Okay, here we go.
Things
Here.
are just popping up. The shit. I'll tell you what. The color of these bubbles, it kind of looked like damn double bubble back in the day. Or
Double
something.
bubble.
Is that what it was called? The
I think that
gum?
is what it's called. Yeah.
But the main event, Islam Makhachev versus Bobby Green, and this is an interesting fight to talk about for this show because these odds are how do
The biggest we've got to discuss.
Yeah, how do you say they're a bit favored in one direction? Islam Makhachev minus 900 on the money line, while Bobby Green plus 600. Obviously, most of that being because Bobby Green's stepping in on 2 weeks' notice for this fight, and also because there's just Bobby Green's not ranked. Islam Makhachev's literally number 4, potentially the next guy up. Now we understand. When we're doing this discussion, we know that like these odds aren't here because these odds are not in place in terms of how much, like, it's not necessarily that they think Islam Makhachev is going to win 9 out of 10 times or something like that.
Yeah.
They're simply numbers put in place to entice betting. That's all it is. But we're still going to kind of focus on do we feel like odds are too far in one direction, or that's just the way we're going to do this show. I mean, that's the way it is. So, Dominic, when you look at these odds, even with the fact that you do have Bobby Green stepping in on short notice and, Islam Makhachev being as good as he is, potentially being the next guy for the title, do you think these odds are too much in his favor at this point?
No. I was curious when this fight got announced, like, oh man, wonder what these lines are going to be, because I don't know what Dariush and Makhachev was, but I'd be willing to bet Makhachev was still probably over a 2-1 favorite. I don't know.
I was
for
going to
sure.
say that too, and I've said
Yeah.
Dariush was like a plus 180, something
Yeah.
like that.
But now we have this minus 900 plus 600. It's the the biggest odds differential that we've had to discuss through. This will be, I guess, the 6th nosebleed we've had this year, or 5th. or no, sixth. But it's warranted. Bobby Green at the end of the day is coming in on short notice. This fight's even at catch weight at 160 pounds, and it's just you look at the fight itself. And I said this on our weekend preview. Makhachev is not a favorable matchup for anyone in the lightweight division,
Mhm.
including Bobby Green, who's coming in on short notice, and a guy that's primarily a boxer. That's what we've seen from him throughout his whole career. And I'm not saying that he's just going to come in and roll over and it's all Makhachev. I think Bobby Green can make noise. I just don't know if he can get that win, and that's why these odds are so heavily favored toward Makhachev. At the end of the day, I'm very curious. Can Bobby Green put up a fight? Can he make it interesting? We talked about how on the preview, if he even as so much lands a good shot, his stock still is going to rise. For Makhachev, I just want to know what we're going to see from him. I'm very excited. Is he going to pull any rabbits out of the hat? Is he going to go to the bread and butter? Because it is a tough guy at the end of the day, and Bobby Green.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it might seem kind of boring for us both to kind of to go in this direction, but I mean, it's the truth. Like,
Yeah.
no matter what positively we can say about Bobby Green, I would say he's the better boxer. He's fantastic in his boxing.
Yes.
He's a guy with a big chip on his shoulder. He's a matchup that Islam was not already preparing for. So there's kind of the thing where Islam's also taking this fight on 2 weeks' notice. And like you mentioned, and you had a very impassioned speech about this on Monday about how Bobby Green's a man with nothing to lose and everything to gain. And while I think that for Islam, I feel like there's kind of a similar thing going on there, like more so than people want to acknowledge. Like I think he does have a lot to lose and gain from
Yeah.
winning that fight because we still think it's a title eliminator for him. But even with all those positives we just said about Bobby Green, in terms of like odds to win a fight, I mean, he is clearly a big underdog. And I don't know if I would have it minus 900 plus 600. I don't know where I would necessarily place it, but it did when I saw it, it didn't surprise me.
Not at all.
It didn't tell me that, it was too much in one direction or another. I mean, it felt right. And that's really the most I can say. And, again, I think that when, putting a little bit on Bobby, I mean, it's not going to be the worst thing anybody can do. I'm the guy who acted like Juliana Pena had no chance against Amanda Nunes, and then she went in there and kind of won the majority of the fight. So
Yeah.
for that, like that, this would be less of a surprise than that was, in my opinion. So it can happen. This is a sport. Again, I mentioned this on the preview show that we just got done recording. I'm going to say it again. This is the one sport where even if it's like some, let's say it's heading towards a 30-24 Dom decision, if this was the equivalent of that in the NFL where a team's up by 30 points, there's no play or touchdown that's worth 31 points. In MMA, you always have an equalizer.
Yep.
So when you have these huge underdogs, it's always, if you have the money to do it, it's always kind of worth it to sprinkle, here or there. But I don't know if you're going to hear either of us do it today, but
Yeah.
there you go. Moving on to the pick'em fight of the week. This is the fight with the closest odds as we are recording. Again, we're recording this Wednesday evening. There was 2 fights with the
Yeah.
same odds.
That was a
We
first.
decided that we just decided to pick. Sorry to the co-main event, but this is the fight I think we're just a little more interested in. Terrance McKinney at a plus 100 going up against Ziam at minus 120. And I'm just going to start here because I'll admit it, I'm definitely riding high on Terrance McKinney right now. Not necessarily like no disrespect to Ziam, but Terrance McKinney, the 7-second knockout, along with the fact that when you look at his resume before the UFC, the guy had that Tyson-esque finishing ability. I mean, this guy's, for 155 pounds, he's dangerous.
Yeah.
And, he's got a great story that always kind of appeals to me. So I was actually very surprised to see that he was the underdog here against Ziam. And yes, you look a little more into Ziam's resume and you're like, okay, this guy is well-rounded. He's good. And he's really good when you go outside of round 1, which is the part that I think is why McKinney is at least a slight underdog. I think it's so much about unknown about what really is he past the first round.
Yeah.
But that power is something that is so strong in him. And you even mentioned this on the previous show, more submission wins than knockout wins. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
And it just makes me more like Ziam. He's been winning fights, but he's had a majority decision in there and stuff. He's not necessarily dominating anybody.
Right.
We've seen 7 seconds of McKinney in the UFC, but
Yeah.
it's enough for me to say that he should
It was
probably
dominant.
be the favorite, I would say. So,
Yeah.
Dominic, how do you see this fight right now, and do you think the odds sort of illustrate that?
I like these odds. This fight very honestly, I think it should be just a dead straight pick 'em. To be honest, dead even odds. I think this is a really good fight on paper. Two very young, talented up and comers for this lightweight division. Terrance McKinney, you mentioned how he's dangerous. I mean, the guy has a 100% finish rate. You talked about the rounds. 10 of his 11 finishes have came in the first round, and that's where we were kind of saying if this does leave the first round, this fight gets a whole lot more interesting. For Ziam, I mean, he's a finisher in his own right with 9 out of 12. He kind of gets it done both ways as well. So they're two really well-rounded fighters, man, and that's why I like these odds. Even though honestly, I wish they were a little closer. I think it's a fun scrap, and it's guys with a lot of upside, and that's what makes fights like these that much more exciting.
Mm-hmm. Let's get into the underdog of the week. This is me and Dom's pick for someone who is an underdog right now on the odds. Who is the person that we're kind of riding with the most? Who are we most confident in as it stands? Now, I know I just said all that about Terrance McKinney, and he is technically an underdog at plus 100. I didn't really feel right to pick him just because, like, it's basically a pick him. And,
Yeah.
I wanted to be a little more dangerous with my pick, and it's going to be Armin Petrosyan.
I like it.
Plus 140. He's going up against Gregory Rodriguez, another guy I'm a fan of. So I kind of hate to side against Gregory here, but Gregory Rodriguez is great for a good swing and bang type fight. The fights that we love. He's a good striker, but sometimes he gets a little wobbled on the feet, a little hurt. His last fight where he went zombie mode to win. And when he does, it turns into a bit of a rowdy brawl. Obviously not the most technical of outings, but it's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Armin Petrosyan, I think, is that in more. He's got the power, he's got the threat on the feet, but it's much more technical, much more composed, and much more effective overall, I think. So for Petrosyan to be an underdog, it's him. He's making his UFC debut. He was on the Contender Series. He looked fantastic. It is a tough first draw going up against Gregory Rodriguez, who has been on a winning streak in the UFC. But I think this is going to be a showcase for him ultimately to really perhaps propel him into a pretty big matchup next to maybe earn himself a shot at top 15. I really think the UFC see the upside in him by the matchmaking here, and I think it'll show Saturday as well.
I like that one, man. For mine, I'm going with honestly my most anticipated fight of the whole card here, and it's Joel Alvarez. He's plus 180 taking on number 13 ranked Arman Saryukin. What's Arman finishing in at? I think he's minus 220 right now. So, for Joel to be at plus 180, don't get me wrong, Saryukin's an absolute stud, but so is Alvarez. Both these guys are so young, so talented. They're both 4-1 in the UFC. They're both on 4-fight win streaks. They're both finishers. But Alvarez is so much bigger in this one. I think he's got a 6-inch height advantage, a 4.5-inch reach advantage. He's 19 wins, 19 finishes, 16 of them via submission. But Noah pointed out so brilliantly on the preview that a lot of that is set up by his hands. A lot of people don't realize that. So I think, on the feet, this one could be a very fun toss-up. On the ground, we could see some fun transitioning. It's two guys that are so good and so much upside for this light heavyweight division. It's number 13 versus a guy who should have a number next to his name, in my opinion. It's probably because he missed weight. So again, hopefully when this comes out Friday, he made weight. Oh God, please. Fingers are crossed, because I think this is going to be an awesome fight, man. And this is one that I feel should be much, much closer to a pick'em feel. But to have Joel at plus 180, there's definitely value here in that, if you ask me.
Yeah, this feels like the odd makers, or I don't know. I don't want to make any assumptions on how they put their odds here. I'm not that good. I'm not that smart at this stuff. But
yeah,
it feels like when I look at the odds, it feels like Arman Saryukin, while still being a guy kind of overlooked in terms of this matchup, he is the one that's probably the more known in terms of being a big prospect, a
Hmm.
future perhaps title challenger. Well, Joel Alvarez, it feels like it's kind of come out of nowhere, and even though that's not the case, the guy's been putting on clinics for a while. He is starting to just now kind of get that respect.
Yeah.
So it feels like, Saryukin's just favored in that way alone. But I do think there's maybe some he does have a big advantage in terms of his wrestling grappling here. But even then that's a tough thing to do with a guy like Alvarez who's going to have a big advantage size wise. And
Yeah.
when you get him on his back, he's still a threat with the submissions. Obviously, has 16 of them, I believe you said, in his
Yeah.
career.
Insane.
And when it comes to the fight on the feet, Joel Alvarez looks great when it comes to the striking. Even if he only has the 3 KO TKOs, I think it doesn't tell the full story. But Saryukin showed a lot of growth there as well in his last fight where he KO'd Christos Yagos. All in all, what I'm trying to say is I'm avoiding this fight like the plague.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
this fight could go a million different ways, a million different I could see either guy winning this fight by any method you can imagine in any round, and it wouldn't surprise me. And that's just too many variables for me to put a bet on it.
I couldn't have put it better than that.
So now it's time for what you all came here, the below average bet slip. We're looking for a bounce back, Dominic. Me and Dominic both had tough weeks. I mean, Dominic did come out on a plus on his own. So I mean,
Shout out to Jim Miller.
yes, but all in all, not our best week as a tandem. So we
Yeah.
decided to respond to that by going in opposite directions. I
Very
think
much.
this is Dominic's probably most conservative week, and this is my most liberal week because
Yeah. Yeah.
I have 5 bets, 2 of them parlays. Dominic,
Two?
Dominic, you have 2. So
Yeah.
I guess I'll go first, just
You should. Yeah.
because.
Even it out.
just, but overall, I mean, we're still matching our high 7 total. That was what we
Yeah.
had last week, so
Yeah.
still reaching pretty big numbers. But basically, I'm going to give you guys a little look into the brain this week because again, I'm dressed like B Rabbit. Had a really bad week. Went -4. Now, did I place a bet before the first fight of the night between Jonathan Pierce and what was your boy's name?
Christian Rodriguez.
Christian Rodriguez. Did I place that fight to go to distance? And it did at +250. Maybe, but we won't count that because again, I still ended up on the negative end by the end of the night. But whatever. Now, for me, my response was okay. I want to play it safe. Part of me does. Like I do. I want to play it safe because I want to get some bets that I feel like are real locks, even if there's some, a little more money I got to put up front, and maybe I'm earning a little less, a little bit on the minus side. But then I was looking at it and I was like, man, I'm gonna do that, but I'm also gonna say fuck it and just full send. So
He's feeling dangerous.
the first one here, Alejandro Perez versus Jonathan Martinez, a very interesting fight. 2 guys in kind of opposite places in their career. Perez kind of clinging to the relevancy. He's coming off a great submission win. While
Yeah,
Jonathan
sick.
Martinez is still trying to establish himself in this division. He's had a couple of nice decision wins, but I think that's been his problem is he's not really finishing anybody. He's kind of just doing enough to get the victory, but not really excelling in a lot of these fights. So for this fight, I honestly was tempted to pick Perez as a pretty big underdog
Same.
pick.
Yeah.
But I couldn't quite pull the trigger on him. Martinez is very good. But, Dominic, I am going to go to under on 2.5 rounds. And, this is a fight that could go to distance. Again, Jonathan Martinez tends to win his fights that way. But at +135, I looked at it like, okay, you get plus odds. Basically, as long as this fight doesn't end after the last 2.5 minutes,
Yeah.
then, we get some money there. So that was the first one. I felt like that was a pretty good odds there. Perez is a guy that's going to really bring the action. And I think if anybody's going to force Martinez to be less conservative, this would be the fight to do so. And then
Yeah.
I'll follow it up with one more, and then I'll swing it to you. For one of our women's fights, Josiane Nunes and Ramona Pascal. These are 2 women to be on the lookout for in this bantamweight division, I would say, especially Nunes. Both pretty good finishers as well.
Mm-hmm.
However, I am going over 1.5 rounds at minus 130, even with their finishing capabilities. And I kind of do potentially see a finish here, but I don't see it happening very quickly. I think it's a fight that it could go into that second and third round, and then maybe you see the finish, or it just goes to a decision, which again, for women's fights, over 50% of the time that happens. It's a fair play anytime you can. And minus 130, I was willing to kind of leave a bit on the table there to earn a little.
Yeah, I actually like that one. I'm pretty intrigued relatively into that women's fight. Not only just because it's two ladies that like to get the finish, but bantamweight kind of needs newer blood, and that's two of them right there. So I'm excited for that one. So bet number one for me, I'm just gonna go the prop bet first, parlay last. Build up the anticipation, of course. So I'm actually going with an under as well. I'm going Rong Zhu versus Ignacio Bahamondes under 2.5 rounds at plus 125. I mean, I don't want to say it's a steal, people, but I mean, we're talking two guys that like to finish fights. For Rong Zhu, he's finished 16 out of 18, but when he loses, three of those times he's been finished. And for Bahamondes, he's finished 9 out of 12. And when he loses, he's lost 2 out of 4 via stoppage. So either way, win or lose, these guys are not going the distance very often. And if you're giving me 2.5, that's a lot of time for these guys to make damage. I mean, even Bahamondes is coming off of a third round finish. I don't know if it might have went over 2.5, but still, they can finish the fight all the way into that third round. And if you're giving me 12.5 minutes with two guys that are this dangerous, I really like those odds at plus 125.
Yeah, I like your picking it. I like the way you went into your brain there. That was good. I'll do back to back again, and then we'll swing it back to you for the parlay.
Yep.
The last single play here, Terrance McKinney. I had to do it. As much as I do recognize Ziam as a threat, as a good fighter, and this could end up being a bit of a dud for Terrance McKinney, I'm going to ride with him by KO TKO, even though Dominic's stat about the submissions kind of scares me now. Terrance McKinney by KO TKO is the play here at plus 240. You get odds like that for a guy
That's
with
big
the finishing
odds.
capabilities that he has. That's what Dominic did with Jim Miller, who,
Yeah.
had won a lot of fights via finish as of late. Terrance McKinney, if either guy, when you look at the likelihood of how this matchup's going to go, I feel like it's Ziam by decision or McKinney by knockout or
Yeah.
submission, I guess. But I feel like if this fight's going to go to a finish, it's going to be McKinney who's the one swinging the hammer. And I just see him doing it, man. I don't know. I'm really buying into him. And maybe it's just appealing to the heart, the story he has. But
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I'm going to start with my next parlay. This is the Moneyline parlay. 3 legs. Comes out to plus 105 overall. Starting with Brahimaj, minus 400. Second
Love
appearance
that.
on the below average or on the nosebleeds.
That's true.
But, he is coming off a loss to Court McGee, but here he gets a more favorable matchup. And, him sitting at minus 400 is, that tells the story there. So I'm going with him as the first leg. Then I do have Ignacio Bahamondes in my second leg. Definitely a risky pick because Rong Zhu, again, a lot of potential. And Bahamondes has not necessarily been perfect either, even though he's coming off a very great finish, and that's really been kind of the story for him, highlight real finishes, but there's a lot of in-between periods where it's lacked a little substance, He's had some close decision wins and even I think a split decision loss to John McDessie, but I am going to go with him here. I think Rong Zhu just is still a bit too young for this kind of matchup, and I don't know if it's going to go to a finish or not. I know you tend to think it will. It's a little up in the air for me, but it obviously has the capability to do so. Now, leg 3, Islam Makhachev, minus 900. I mean, if you're going to put money on Makhachev, you might as well add it into a parlay. It's the only way it's really going to be worth it. And I mean, I pretty much said everything I could say about Islam Makhachev already. He should win this fight.
Yeah.
He's minus 900. It ultimately comes out to a plus 105. It's risky. 3 legs for just a bit plus money, but 3 guys I feel pretty confident in going into Saturday. And now, Dominic, your parlay.
Yeah, so Noah, I've done 3 parlays so far throughout the nosebleeds. All 3 have been straight up money lines. I'm straying away because I'm 1 and 2, so I gotta switch it up. I gotta keep myself
Mm-hmm.
fresh, and I gotta come out with some positive money here. So I'm going a 2 leg parlay. It was gonna be 3. We had a fight fall off. I'm not gonna get into it, but it's 2 legs now. Total odds are plus 122. So we got a little bit of profit here, a little bit of plus money. First one, I'm going with Ramiz Brahimaj as Noah did, but it's to win by submission. It's actually sitting at plus 100. This is really good value, even if you're wanting like a prop bet, in my opinion, because all 9 of Brahimaj's wins have come via submission, and 3 out of 4 of Michael Gilmore's losses have been via submission. I think that's the only route to victory here for Brahimaj. So I really like that at plus 100. And then the second leg, Islam Makhachev money line. It's minus 900, but to pair that with something of plus money to pull that parlay out and make it a plus, I really like that. You know our thoughts on Islam already. It is a fight that he should win. It's just a matter of how. I didn't want to risk going like by finish because Bobby Green hardly ever gets finished. So I needed to incorporate Islam somehow. This is the way I saw fit.
And what was the overall? Um,
Overall, 2 leg parlay plus 122.
nice. That's pretty. I mean, that's pretty good. I
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
for sure. My last parlay is also going to be a 2-legger, and I'm also straying away from the money line parlays. I don't know if I've only done that, but I think I have. It was also 3 legs. We had the same one in mind, but
Yeah.
since that fight is off, it is now just 2 legs. Petrosian Rodriguez, the fight I already talked about. Again, I really feel confident about Armin Petrosian, but not enough to put money on him. So
Yeah.
I did not do that. I did go with Armin Petrosian and Gregory Rodriguez's fight to not go to distance as the first leg here, minus 450. The odds makers really telling the story there. This is a fight that pretty clearly feels like one that's going to go inside the distance. I feel like someone's going to come out of here looking like an absolute stud.
Yeah.
And again,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be Petrosian, but if Rodriguez does it, man, he's due for a big one too. Second leg, Jiyeon Kim and Priscilla Cachoeira. An interesting fight to have on this main card, especially for Cachoeira, who is nobody's favorite fighter right now, coming off of her eye gouging incident from the fall. But for their fight, this one is interesting. I'm going with the fight to go the distance at minus 165. With Priscilla, they call her Zombie Girl because she has been put through a lot of damage in her career and tends to always come back, even come back and finish certain fights. But overall, I don't see these two really having that kind of fight. I think it'll be a little more subdued. Overall, this 2-leg parlay comes out to minus 104. Again, some of these aren't really sexy, payouts, but we got to go where the money we feel like is most confident in. And truthfully, this card is tough. Man.
It is.
It's a really tough card. I don't blame Dom at all for going the route he did because I think it's probably the smarter one. For me, it's like I feel confident enough in most of these, but you just never know. I felt confident in a lot of my picks last week too, but so the way it goes. Again, I think I'm okay with losing on these because I feel like they're decent bets right now.
Right. Yeah. There's nothing outlandish at the end of the day.
That's how I feel about these. So overall, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Nosebleeds. Let us know what plays you're making this weekend. What sportsbook are you using? All of our odds, by the way, from DraftKings Sportsbook.
Yep.
Forgot to mention that. Shout out to DraftKings.
Shout out.
If you want to sponsor us, hey, we're open to it.
Oh, man, we could do some cool shit, DraftKings. Come on.
But, let us know what sportsbook you're using. Are where are you watching the fights this weekend? All that jazz. This was an early start time, right? 4 p.m. on Saturday?
I think it's the same as last week, so the prelims 4, main card's still at 7. Yeah. But I like those the best, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, no, I agree. It'll be fun. It's going to be a really jam-packed weekend, too, because really Saturday is all UFC, which is nice.
Yeah.
Friday, you got, PFL, Challenger, you got Bellator, you got ONE FC, LFA. Yeah. There's a lot going on Fridays, so
If you're betting on any of those, let us know, by the way.
Yeah, yep, because I almost dabbled into some. I mean, I still might. I'm not doing it for this, but
Yeah.
I almost dabbled for this show for a parlay for Bellator, but didn't quite pull the trigger. I still probably will end up doing it when the time comes. But again, yeah, let us know all that. But until then, we'll be back next week. UFC 272.
Oh,
That's going to be a big one, Dominic. But
oh man.
until then, tell the good people where they can find you on social media.
You can find me on Twitter, on Instagram at dslee14. More importantly, go follow, go engage, and go interact with us, with the show on Twitter, on Instagram. Give us your best bets at BAJ_MMA podcast.
And you can find me on Twitter or Instagram at ntbaker_. If you go to the link in my bio, it'll take you to a link tree, which presents you a list of links to all the platforms the podcast's on, along with social media platforms. So that includes,
but it's not limited to,
the Twitter, the Instagram, the YouTube channel, and Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcast. It's all on there. And there's a couple links for the podcast sponsor, Anchor.
Shout out.
First, leaving a voice message. Again, up to 60 seconds. You can play anything you want to know. If you want to ask questions, if you want to leave your thoughts, any plays you want to make, if you want to talk about how bad our bet slip was this week, how terrible I am as a gambler. You
go easy on us.
Yeah, and there's also a link on there if you want to become a supporter of the podcast. We promise not to use any of your financial backing for the plays that we make on the show, but we will use it to improve the show over time and add some little doodads here and there. But that's it. We're out. We'll see y'all next Friday.